The Galactic Council was the most powerful organization in the universe, made up of thousands of alien species. They controlled trade, war, and peace across the stars. Among them, the Zorveni Empire was one of the strongest. Their warriors were feared, their technology was advanced, and their empire had conquered hundreds of planets. So when they first heard about humans, they laughed. "These creatures come from a tiny blue planet," a Zorveni general said, waving his four-fingered hand dismissively. "Their world is barely developed. Their ships are primitive, and their bodies are weak." The other members of the council agreed. Humans were small, soft-skinned, and fragile compared to many alien species. They didn't have natural armor like the Draven, who had scales tougher than steel. They didn't have the strength of the Gorgle, who could crush metal with their bare hands. Humans had no claws, no fangs, no energy-based abilities. They were ordinary. "We should invite them to the council," suggested a wise but cautious elder. "Let them learn our ways." But the Zorvani had a better idea. "We should test them," said Supreme Commander Varric, the leader of the Zorvani military. "Let our finest warriors go to their world. We will see what they are made of." The council agreed. It would be an easy victory, a way to prove Zorvani strength. And so, a fleet of 50 Zorvani warships set course for Earth. The arrival. The human satellites detected the alien ships first. The world went into a panic. Governments scrambled to prepare. Messages were sent, hoping to make peace. But the Zorveni did not come to talk. Their ships hovered over major cities: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo. They broadcast a message in perfect English, their translators working instantly. "People of Earth, we are the Zorvani. Your species has been judged. We challenge you in battle. If you surrender now, we will be merciful." At first, humans didn't understand. Were they serious? Was this some kind of test? But then the first attack came. A squad of elite Zorvani warriors descended in a metallic drop pod. They landed in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, expecting to claim territory. They expected an easy victory. They were wrong. The jungle fights back. The first mistake the Zorvani made was underestimating Earth itself. They stepped out of their pod, weapons ready. Their armor gleamed under the sun, their blue skin smooth and confident. The squad leader, Captain Ricard, scanned the jungle. "This planet is humid," one soldier muttered, adjusting his breathing mask. "The air is too thick," another agreed. They ignored it. The jungle was silent, nothing but the distant chirping of insects and the rustling of leaves. Then the first soldier collapsed. The others turned in shock. He was gasping, clutching his throat. His skin turned a strange color. Something had bitten him. "What is this?" Ricard demanded. He scanned the area with his helmet's sensors. His screen flashed warnings. "Unknown poison. DETCTED. Body systems failing." The jungle was alive, and it was hunting them. Nature's wrath. The Zorvani were warriors. They had fought in icy tundras, barren deserts, and toxic wastelands. But Earth was different. Their armor protected them from energy blasts, but not from invisible bacteria that attacked their lungs. Their shields could block laser fire, but not from the venom of a tiny jungle frog that could kill in seconds. One soldier screamed as a swarm of army ants crawled over him. Another was dragged away by something in the trees, vanishing into the darkness. The mighty Zorvani, conquerors of 100 worlds, were dying to Earth itself. Ricard activated his communicator. "We need extraction," he shouted. Static. The thick jungle interfered with their signals. They were alone. "Stay together," he ordered. "We moved to high ground." But the jungle had other plans. A jaguar leaped from the trees, claws slicing through the throat of one Zorvani soldier before anyone could react. The alien collapsed, gurgling. Ricard fired his plasma rifle. The jaguar vanished into the undergrowth. Then the howls began. Wolves. One soldier whispered in disbelief. No, something worse. Eyes glowed in the darkness. A pack of hungry predators was watching, waiting. The Zorvani, trained in space combat, had never felt true fear. But now, standing in the wildest place on Earth, they finally did. The Galactic Council watches. Back on the Galactic Council's main station, alien leaders watched in horror as live footage came in from the Zorvani warships. They had expected an easy victory. Instead, they watched as an entire squad of elite warriors was wiped out in mere hours. Impossible, a Gorgol warlord muttered. Are humans doing this? No, the Dravan ambassador said, shaking his head. Their planet is doing this. The footage changed. It now showed human military forces preparing for battle. The Galactic Council saw soldiers loading advanced rifles, engineers programming drone strikes, pilots preparing fighter jets, and worst of all, they saw civilians, men, women, and even children, sharpening knives, building barricades, and preparing to fight. The aliens finally realized their mistake. They had laughed at humans, but they had forgotten one thing. Earth was not just a planet. It was a battlefield, and humans were born to survive it. The Zorvani warriors were some of the finest in the galaxy. They had fought in the frozen lands of Volcarnine, where the cold could freeze metal. They had survived the burning deserts of Karzak, where the sandstorms could strip flesh from bone. But nothing had prepared them for Earth. Captain Rikar's squad had landed in the Amazon rainforest, expecting an easy mission. They thought they would scout the planet, test human defenses, and return victorious. Instead, the jungle had turned against them, lost and hunted. Thick vines tangled around their boots. The air was heavy, hot, and wet, making their breathing masks useless. Their armored suits hummed, struggling to adapt to the planet's chaotic environment. And then there was the noise. Chirping, rustling, distant roars. Sounds came from every direction, but they could see nothing. Rikar clenched his jaw. His squad had already lost 3 soldiers, to venom, to a predator, to insects of all things. They were trained for war. But how do you fight a planet itself? We need to keep moving, Rikar said, his voice tight. The extraction point is north. They moved through the dense foliage, weapons raised, eyes scanning the shadows. Their thermal scanners flickered, confused by the wild heat signatures all around them. Something was watching them. Something was waiting. The predator's eyes, a pair of golden eyes, peered through the darkness. The creature crouched low, its body silent as the wind. It had been following the strange new creatures for hours, studying them. It had never seen beings like these before. They were big, covered in hard metal skin, and they moved awkwardly through the jungle. But they bled like everything else. The creature licked its sharp teeth. It was time to strike. The attack. The Zorvani squad didn't hear it coming. One moment, they were walking. The next, a blur of muscle and claws crashed into the rear soldier. The warrior screamed as he was dragged into the undergrowth. The squad spun around, weapons aimed, but they saw nothing. Only the thrashing of leaves, the sound of snapping bones, and silence. Eyes open. Rikar barked. The jungle stared back. The human problem. Back in orbit, the Zorvani flagship hovered above Earth. Admiral Quark watched the battle footage with growing concern. His elite warriors were being picked off like prey. "Sir," an officer said nervously, "we have intercepted human communications. They know we are here. They are preparing for war." Quark frowned. "What do you mean?" The officer hesitated, then played a transmission from Earth's military channels. "This is General Carter. All forces, prepare for contact. The enemy is underestimating us. Let's make them regret it." Another voice followed, this time from a civilian broadcast. "They think we're weak. They landed in the wrong place. Let's show them why Earth is not for the faint of heart. The humans were not panicking. They were excited. Admiral Cork felt something he had never felt before. Unease. The trap. Back in the jungle, Rikar's squad pressed forward, moving faster now. "This planet is cursed," one soldier muttered. "No," Rikar growled. "It's alive." Then suddenly, a loud snap. The ground beneath them collapsed. Rikar and his men fell, sliding down a pit lined with sharp wooden spikes. They barely managed to activate their anti-gravity stabilizers in time. But the moment they landed, boom, a hidden explosive went off, sending them flying. Pain shot through Rikar's body as he hit the ground hard. His visor cracked, his weapon lost somewhere in the dirt. His head spun. What was happening? Who could have set this trap? And then he saw them. The monsters of Earth. Humans. They emerged from the trees like ghosts, their faces painted in mud and camouflage. Some held rifles. Others held knives, bows, or makeshift weapons. One human, a woman with sharp eyes, smirked at him. "Welcome to Earth," she said. The Zorvani had expected primitives. Instead, they had found hunters. And they were not the prey. The fear spreads. Back on the Zorvani flagship, Admiral Cork listened as desperate distress signals came from the jungle teams. "We are under attack. They set traps. They are waiting for us. Request immediate extraction. They are not weak. They are predators." Then came the final transmission. "This is Captain Rikar. Tell the Council. We were wrong about humans." Then, silence. The line went dead. Admiral Cork turned to his officers, his face pale. "What have we awakened?" The Galactic Council had laughed at humans. Now, they were starting to understand their mistake. The jungle was silent. Captain Rikar lay on the ground, his body aching from the explosion. His squad was in ruins, some wounded, others missing. His helmet's display flickered, struggling to function. His weapon was buried under dirt and leaves. And surrounding him were humans. They stood like shadows in the trees, watching him with cold, calculating eyes. They wore camouflage, their faces painted to blend with the jungle. Some held rifles, others had blades. Primitive weapons, yet deadly in the right hands. The leader, a tall man with a scar running across his cheek, stepped forward. He had the calm confidence of a hunter who had cornered his prey. "You're far from home, alien," the man said in a steady voice. "And Earth isn't kind to visitors." Rikar felt something he had never felt before. Fear. The hunt begins. Hours earlier, the human military had intercepted the Zorvani landing signals. They knew the aliens had arrived, but instead of panicking, they prepared. General Carter, leader of Earth's defense forces, gathered his best men. "These invaders think we're weak," he told his soldiers. "They think they can walk in and take over." He looked at the maps, showing enemy landing zones. His eyes narrowed. "We won't fight them like they expect. We'll fight them like humans. Guerrilla warfare, traps, ambushes, psychological tactics." The Zorvani had superior technology, but they were not ready for the chaos that was about to unfold. Earth would teach them a lesson. The Zorvani's worst nightmare. Rikar tried to move, but the humans didn't let him. One of them, a woman with short black hair, pressed the barrel of a gun to his chest. "Stay down," she said. Rikar clenched his fists. "We are warriors of the Zorvani Empire. We do not surrender." The scared man tilted his head. "Warriors, va?" He looked around at the destroyed squad, the traps that had torn through their armor, the jungle that had swallowed them whole. "You don't look like warriors to me," the man said. "You look like lost children." Rikar growled, but deep inside, he knew the human was right. His people were not prepared for this world. The Zorvani fought wars in open battlefields, where armies clashed in grand formations. They used advanced weapons, energy shields, and precise tactics. But this This was not a battlefield. This was a hunt, and humans were the apex predators. Back in space, panic spreads. Above Earth, inside the Zorvani flagship, Admiral Quark paced back and forth. The reports from the jungle were getting worse. Squads had gone silent. Distress signals were disappearing. Something was wrong. A young officer swallowed hard. "Sir, we are losing more teams. The humans are hunting them." "Hunting," Quark repeated. The officer nodded and played the latest transmission. "They set traps. They hide in the trees. They strike and vanish. We can't see them. They are ghosts. This planet, it's alive." Then, static. Another squad was gone. Admiral Quark's heart pounded. The Galactic Council had always mocked humans, calling them weak, but now they were terrified. The escape attempt. Back in the jungle, Raykar knew his only chance was to escape and regroup. His soldiers were scattered, some injured, some dead. But if he could reach his communicator, he could call for a rescue ship. The humans were skilled hunters, but they had one weakness. They underestimated him. Raykar waited for the right moment. Then he moved. With a sudden burst of strength, he grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into the eyes of the closest human. The woman stumbled back, coughing. Raykar lunged, grabbing a fallen weapon and firing wildly. The humans dove for cover. He ran, faster than he ever had before. Branches scratched against his armor. The humid air burned in his lungs. He could hear the humans shouting behind him. But then, just ahead, he saw it. His communicator, lying in the dirt where it had fallen. Almost there. He reached out. And then a rope tightened around his ankle. In an instant, Raykar was yanked upside down, hanging from a tree. The humans had set another trap. From the shadows, the scared leader stepped out, shaking his head. "You're fast," he said, "but not fast enough." Raykar snarled, struggling. But the humans had already won. "You aliens made a mistake," the man continued. "You thought Earth was just a planet." His cold eyes locked onto Raykar's. "But Earth is a battlefield, and we are its warriors." Raykar went still. He had spent his life believing the Zorvani were the strongest in the galaxy. But now, hanging upside down, captured and defeated, he finally understood the truth. The strongest had always been the ones who survived the hardest worlds. And Earth. Earth was the hardest of them all. The Galactic Council's decision. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, alien leaders watched the horrifying battle reports from Earth. They had expected a quick victory. Instead, they had watched as one of the most powerful species in the galaxy was defeated. The Drevon ambassador, his scaled face pale, turned to the council. "We must classify Earth immediately," he said. The room fell silent. Then a voice whispered, "A Level 8 Hellworld." Gasps filled the room. Level 8 planets were so dangerous that no species willingly settled on them. Only the most fearsome creatures could live there, and humans had evolved there naturally. Fear spread across the council. They had laughed at humans. Now they feared them. And they knew, if humans ever left their world in force, the entire galaxy would tremble. Captain Raykar hung upside down, his body swinging slightly as he struggled against the rope binding his ankle. His mind raced. He had never been captured before, never been so utterly defeated. The humans watched him with amusement. Their leader, the scared man, stood with his arms crossed. The jungle around them was dark, the only light coming from the moon above. Raykar had always believed that humans were weak. Now he realized he had been a fool. "Not so tough now, are you?" the scared man said. Raykar glared at him. "You think this is over?" The man smirked. "Oh, I know it's not over. Your people will come looking for you." He leaned closer, his eyes sharp. "But when they do, they'll find out what you already know." His voice dropped to a whisper. Earth doesn't forgive trespassers. Rakar's jaw clenched. He had to get out of here. Meanwhile, in orbit, high above Earth, inside the Zorvani flagship, Admiral Quark listened to the reports with growing horror. The latest scans showed human forces moving toward all Zorvani landing zones. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were hunting. "Sir," an officer spoke urgently, "we intercepted a human transmission. They are preparing for a full counterattack." Quark's hands tightened into fists. "We need to retrieve Captain Rekar before it's too late. Prepare a rescue team." The officer hesitated. "Sir, the teams we sent before never returned." Quark's stomach dropped. How could this be happening? They had assumed humans would be easy prey. Instead, Earth was a nightmare. And now, they were at risk of losing everything. Rekar's plan. Back in the jungle, Rekar took slow, careful breaths. He had been trained for situations like this. His warrior instincts were kicking in. He studied the humans. They were strong and smart, but they had made one mistake. They thought he was already beaten. Carefully, he reached toward his waist, where a small hidden blade was strapped. The humans had taken his rifle, but they hadn't searched him properly. Fools. With a sharp flick of his wrist, he sliced through the rope. Rekar dropped to the ground, landing in a crouch. In one swift motion, he grabbed a fallen branch and swung it hard. The nearest human grunted as the wood slammed into his chest, knocking him backward. The others reacted fast, raising their weapons. But Rekar was faster. He darted into the jungle, vanishing into the shadows. Bullets whizzed past him, but he didn't stop. The jungle was dangerous, but right now it was his best ally. He needed to find his squad. He needed to call for extraction. He needed to survive. The jungle fights back. The jungle was alive with sounds, hissing insects, distant growls, rustling leaves. Rekar's enhanced vision scanned the darkness. He could hear humans chasing him, moving swiftly through the trees. But they weren't the only ones hunting tonight. Rekar froze. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the trees. Something was watching him. Slowly, he turned his head and saw glowing yellow eyes staring at him from the shadows. It was a jungle predator, massive and silent. It crouched low, muscles tensed, ready to pounce. Rekar had two choices: fight the beast or run straight into the humans. He chose the third option. He picked up a rock and hurled it at the predator, not to hurt it, but to startle it. The creature roared and charged forward, but not at him. It ran straight toward the approaching humans. Screams filled the air. Rekar didn't wait to see what happened next. He ran deeper into the jungle, his heart pounding. Earth was truly a nightmare. The rescue mission. Above the planet, a Zorvani rescue ship broke through the atmosphere. A squad of heavily armed warriors was inside, preparing to retrieve their captain. They weren't going to fight the humans. They were going to get in and get out, before it was too late. But as they neared the jungle, they saw something that made their blood run cold. The wreckage of Zorvani ships, burned, broken, and abandoned. The humans hadn't just won battles. They had destroyed entire squads. The pilot's hand shook. "Sir, do we proceed?" The squad leader took a deep breath. "We have no choice. We find Rekar, or we don't go back at all." The ship descended. The real battle was about to begin. The humans' next move. Back at a hidden human military base, General Carter watched the radar screens. The enemy rescue ship was entering the atmosphere. A soldier turned to him. "Sir, should we intercept?" Carter smirked. "No," he said. "Let them try." The humans weren't just defending Earth anymore. They were sending a message. A message that the galaxy would never forget. Earth is a hellworld. And humans, they are its deadliest weapon. The jungle was a death trap. Captain Rekar moved carefully through the dense foliage, his body covered in dirt and sweat. His armor was scratched, his energy reserves low, and his mind was racing. The humans were still out there, hunting him. And now, the jungle itself wanted him dead. But he had one advantage. He had sent a distress signal before escaping the humans' camp. His people were coming. He just had to stay alive until then. The Zorveni rescue team arrives. Above Earth, a Zorveni rescue ship hovered over the jungle. The squad leader, Commander Varric, studied the readings. Captain Rekar's signal is weak but active, Varric said. He's still alive. The other warriors nodded, gripping their weapons. They had all heard the stories, how entire squads had disappeared, how the humans were more dangerous than anyone had expected. Varric turned to the pilot. Lower the ship. Stay alert. This planet is cursed. The ship descended into the thick jungle, kicking up leaves and dust. But as soon as they touched the ground, something felt wrong. The jungle was too quiet. And then, boom! An explosion erupted near the ship. The ground shook violently. Trees splintered as fire and debris filled the air. Ambush! A soldier shouted. From the trees, humans emerged like ghosts, their weapons ready. The rescue mission had become a battle for survival. Rekar watches in horror. From a distance, Rekar saw the explosion. His heart pounded. His people had come for him, but the humans had been waiting for them. He watched as his fellow Zorveni warriors were caught in an ambush. Traps exploded under their feet. Camouflaged humans struck from the trees. The rescue team had superior technology, but it didn't matter. The humans were fighting like predators, like hunters, and the Zorveni were the prey. Rekar clenched his fists. He couldn't just stand here and watch his people die. He had to act. The jungle war begins. Varric ducked behind a fallen tree, firing his plasma rifle. Hold the line, he roared. His soldiers took cover, returning fire, but the humans were too fast, too well hidden. These creatures, one of the Zorveni muttered, they're like ghosts. Suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed through the jungle. The humans disappeared into the trees. Silence followed. Varric gritted his teeth. They're toying with us. Then, a branch snapped behind him. He spun around, too late. A human soldier lunged from the shadows, grabbing him in a chokehold. Varric struggled, but the human was stronger than he expected. Then, out of nowhere, a plasma shot rang through the air. The human collapsed, a smoking hole in his chest. Varric looked up in shock. Rekar stood there, breathing hard, his weapon raised. You came for me, Rekar said. Now let's get out of here before we all die. Varric nodded, agreed. But the battle was far from over. The escape plan. The Zorveni warriors regrouped. They were wounded, outnumbered, and deep in enemy territory. We need to reach the ship, Varric said. Rekar shook his head. No, the humans know that's our only way out. They'll be waiting. Varric frowned. Then what do you suggest? Rekar looked toward the thickest part of the jungle. We run. We go where they don't expect. Varric hesitated. And what about our ship? Rekar's eyes darkened. Forget it. The humans already own this battlefield. Varric cursed under his breath. Fine. Let's move. The surviving warriors vanished into the jungle, hoping to escape before it was too late. The humans' final trap. General Carter watched the battlefield through a drone feed. He saw the Zorveni running. He smiled. They think they can escape, he murmured. They don't understand. He turned to his officers. Deploy the final phase. Within minutes, drones filled the sky, scanning the jungle. Hidden mines detonated, cutting off the Zorveni's path. The aliens stopped, panting, realizing they had nowhere left to run. And then, the humans stepped out of the shadows, surrounding them. Rekar and Varric raised their weapons. But they knew it was over. The last decision. General Carter approached, his boots crunching on the dirt. He studied the defeated Zorveni warriors. You're not the first invaders to come here, Carter said. And you won't be the last. Rekar met his gaze. Then why are we still alive? Carter smirked. Because I want you to deliver a message. He stepped closer. Tell your leaders, Earth is a level 8 Hellworld. His voice dropped to a whisper. And humans, we are its demons. Rekar felt a chill down his spine. Carter raised his hand. Now get off my planet. A few moments later, the remaining Zorvani were escorted to a captured alien shuttle. As the ship left Earth's atmosphere, Rekar looked down at the planet. They had come here expecting to conquer. Instead, they had barely escaped with their lives. He turned to Varric. We were wrong about the humans, he said. Varric nodded grimly. Yes. And now the galaxy will know. The shuttle disappeared into space. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The Zorvani shuttle raced through space, leaving Earth behind. The once proud warriors sat in silence, their faces grim. They had come to conquer. They had barely survived. Captain Rekar stared out the window, watching the blue planet shrink into the darkness. His body ached. His mind raced. How had this happened? Humans were supposed to be weak. Instead, they had fought like monsters, like demons. Commander Varric sat across from him, deep in thought. We must report this to High Command, he said. The Zorvani Empire needs to understand what we are dealing with. Rekar nodded. Yes, and we must warn them. He took a deep breath. Earth is a level 8 Hellworld. And if the Empire didn't listen, it would be their downfall. The council meeting. Days later, in the Zorvani capital, the Grand War Council gathered in a towering chamber. High-ranking officials sat in a circle, their eyes cold and calculating. At the center, Rekar and Varric stood before the Emperor himself. Report, the Emperor commanded. Rekar bowed. Your Majesty, we were wrong about the humans. They are not weak. They are not primitive. The council members murmured in confusion. One of them, General Tavor, scoffed. Impossible. Humans have no interstellar travel, no advanced warships. How could they defeat trained Zorvani soldiers? Rekar's hands clenched. They don't fight like us. They don't fight like any species we have ever faced. He took a step forward, his voice steady. They fight to win, at any cost. They use their environment, their instincts. They do not fear pain. They do not fear death. He paused, looking at each council member. And worst of all, they enjoyed the battle. Silence filled the room. The Emperor leaned forward. What are you saying, Captain? Rekar swallowed. I am saying, Your Majesty, if we return to Earth, we will not conquer it. His next words sent a chill through the council. We will not survive. The council's decision. General Tavor slammed his fist on the table. Ridiculous. We have crushed empires. We have defeated entire species. And now you expect us to fear a single primitive planet. Varric stepped forward. With respect, General, you don't understand. The humans knew we were coming. They were prepared. The Emperor studied them both. You mean, they lured us in? Rekar nodded. Yes, and they will do the same to any force we send. Earth is not just a hellworld. It is a trap. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. The Zorvani Empire has never fled from a fight. Rekar's heart sank. Your Majesty, this is not a fight we can win. The Emperor's eyes burned with pride. Then we will burn their world to ash from orbit. Rekar's blood ran cold. That won't work. Tavor sneered. And why not? Rekar's voice was quiet but firm. Because the humans will find a way to survive. And when they do, they will come for us. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The Emperor drummed his fingers on the armrest. Then what do you suggest, Captain? Rekar took a deep breath. We leave Earth alone. We warn the other empires. We do not return. Tavor laughed. Coward. Rekar turned to him. Do you know what the humans called us before they let us go? Tavor smirked. What? Rekar's expression was unreadable. Pray. The message spreads. Despite General Tavor's protests, the Emperor agreed to a temporary halt on all plans for Earth. But rumors spread quickly. Within weeks, other alien species began hearing whispers of a death world, a place where even the mighty Zorveni had failed. The stories grew larger, darker. Some claimed that Earth's oceans were filled with monsters. Others said that the humans had survived nuclear wars, plagues, and disasters for thousands of years. And the most terrifying rumor of all, humans were not just survivors. They were hunters. The galactic community took notice. Some wanted to test the humans. Others wanted to leave them alone. But one thing was certain. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Back on Earth, General Carter stood in a dark room, watching a holographic map of the stars. "Sir," an officer said, "we've intercepted alien transmissions. They're talking about us." Carter smiled. "Good." The officer hesitated. "Do you think they'll come back?" Carter turned, his eyes cold. "If they do." He tapped the hologram, zooming in on the Zorveni homeworld. "We'll be ready." The galaxy was changing. Ever since the failed Zorveni invasion, whispers of Earth had spread across the stars. Some called it a cursed world, others a death trap, but all agreed on one thing: humans were dangerous. Most species wanted to stay away, but some wanted revenge. The Zorvani's last mistake. In the heart of the Zorveni Empire, General Tavor stood in a war chamber, his fists clenched. "This is madness," he growled. "We are the strongest empire in the galaxy. We cannot let these humans humiliate us." The other officers hesitated. The Emperor had forbidden another attack on Earth. But Tavor wasn't ready to accept defeat. "We don't need to invade," he continued. "We just need to show our strength. We will send a fleet, surround their planet, and demand their surrender." One officer hesitated. "And if they refuse?" Tavor smirked. "Then we burn their world." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Captain Rekar stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You don't understand, General. We are not dealing with a normal species. They will not surrender." Tavor scoffed. "They are primitive." "No," Rekar said. "They are survivors, and they are hunters." Tavor waved him off. "Enough. The fleet leaves in 3 days." Rekar's heart sank. They were making a terrible mistake. Earth is ready. In a secret military base deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Carter watched the stars. "We intercepted their transmissions," an officer reported. "They're sending a fleet." Carter smiled. "Good." The officer frowned. "Sir." Carter turned, his expression calm. "They still don't understand, do they?" The officer hesitated. "Sir, we can't fight an entire fleet." Carter chuckled. "You think we haven't prepared for this?" He gestured toward a holographic display, revealing secret orbital defenses, hidden fleets, and planetary weapons. "We knew they'd come back," Carter said. "And this time, they won't leave." The fleet arrives. The Zorveni fleet emerged from hyperspace, surrounding Earth. Hundreds of warships hovered in the void, weapons primed. On the command ship, General Tavor sneered at the blue planet below. "Open communications," he ordered. A few moments later, General Carter's face appeared on the screen. Tavor crossed his arms. "Humans, you have one chance. Surrender now, or we will destroy your world." Carter smiled. "No." Tavor's eyes narrowed. "Then you will." Carter raised a hand. "Let me explain something, General." The screen zoomed out, revealing Earth's hidden defenses. Orbital cannons emerged from the moon's surface. Stealth ships uncloaked in the darkness. Satellites activated, charging deadly EMP weapons. Tavor's confidence wavered. Carter leaned forward. "You thought we were weak. You thought we were prey." His voice turned ice cold. "You were wrong." Silence filled the warship's bridge. Then Carter smiled. Now here's my counteroffer. Leave, or we make sure your empire never rises again. Tavor's hands clenched into fists, but deep down he felt fear. The Emperor's command. Back on the Zorveni homeworld, the Emperor watched the situation unfold. His advisors stood nearby, their faces pale. One of them whispered, "If we attack, we risk total war." The Emperor's eyes darkened. He had doubted Rekar's warnings. Now he saw the truth. The humans were not prey. They were apex predators. "Order the fleet to stand down," the Emperor commanded. A moment later, General Tavor received the order. His face turned red with anger. "But, Your Majesty, enough." The Emperor's voice boomed. "You have already failed once. I will not risk my empire for your foolish pride." Tavor trembled with rage, but he had no choice. He turned to his crew. "Withdraw the fleet." And just like that, the Zorveni invasion was over before it even began. A final warning. As the Zorveni fleet retreated, General Carter watched them go. One of his officers sighed in relief. "It's over." Carter shook his head. "No, it's just beginning." The officer frowned. "Sir." Carter's expression was unreadable. "We made our point. But one day, someone else will come." The officer hesitated. "Then what do we do?" Carter turned to the holographic map of the galaxy. "We prepare." The galaxy watches. The news of the Zorveni retreat spread like wildfire. Across the stars, empires took notice. Some feared the humans. Others wanted to test them. And a few saw an opportunity. But one thing was clear. The galaxy would never underestimate Earth again. And the humans, they were ready for whatever came next.